Have a motion to exit closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Thank you. Motion to certify.
So moved.
Motion to certify, okay.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, have a roll call.
Chair Miller?
Aye.
Vice Chair Travis?
Aye.
Director Farrell?
Aye.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
And Director Broughton?
Aye.
We're ready to go.
The next item of business is Falling Branch Corporate Park Lot 2 construction. So again, Phase 2 Lot 2 is a 20-acre graded lot, road, water and sewer, fiber, and we'll talk more about the pump station. So on the Phase 2 construction, Main Street Builders has finished the water line. I guess to back it up slightly, we had very poor weather conditions in January and February. So from the middle of December to about end of February, really not a lot of work was done. The water line was finished towards the end of February, and that can be compacted differently than the pavement. You can use just rock. And so the permit delay is 45 days and then 78 days of weather days right now. Every time it rains, they get a weather day. So we talked last month about that substantial completion would be probably around May 15th at this time, and H&P must revise the stormwater permits so we can store the topsoil outside the current limits of disturbance. So on the construction plan, you have the limits of disturbance, which determines, well, right now, let's say we're at 30 acres of disturbance, determines how much stormwater you have to have. So you go 10,000 feet more than what you're supposed to do, and the town of Christiansburg and Blacksburg and DEQ requires a new permit or an updated permit. So for this month's application for payment number 8, the contractor did approximately $347,265 worth of work. Last month we only approved about a $50,000 payment. It was not a whole lot there. And this month, you can see this better on your iPad. Again, the finishing up the water line and stormwater and diversion ditches. So this was a pretty decent month. Hopefully they can start, they're starting to, quote unquote, grade the property as we speak. And this is a graphic I often use to show FedEx pre-graded, and of course Lot 2. And for those of you who don't see this every day, the water line follows the blue line. So the water line is the blue line and the road. So it's kind of, I know by just looking at it, because I've looked at it 1,000 times. And the red square is roughly the pad part. So right now, this is about the only part they have complete. And so again, it's going to take a couple months. Hopefully, if we have this kind of weather, soils dry out, and we're in good shape.
And the topsoil storage is off to the right there?
Yes, sir. The topsoil storage would be in this area. The contractor will have to put in some new pipe, which was in the plans, but the additional pipe will be a change order. Basically, they're covering up a ditch, running a pipe through, and then mounding the topsoil.
Span the ditch.
Yes.
And that's the new area that'll have to be added to their disturbed acreage for their drainage permit.
Correct. So we're hoping the town, hoping that permit process is not lengthy, because it does delay us until they can get their final quote-unquote resting place It's been moved around several times.
And they gotta go through Christiansburg and DEQ, right?
Just town of Christiansburg.
It's down in Christian, okay.
They have their own
That should be
MO4
fast.
permits.
That should be fairly fast.
Right now, we're looking at getting it finished by March 26th. So get our initial review completed. This is, I didn't want to get too technical, but this is the top limits of disturbance currently are here. We're trying to adjust it to the red, so it's the exact same amount of disturbance, so we don't have to modify the permit and get a complete plan review.
That would have to go to DEQ.
It can stay in Christiansburg. We don't have, Christiansburg and Blacksburg review their own permits. How they interpret it can sometimes be a little different than DEQ, but they review their own permits. So as far as continuing on lot 2, the pump station study is active. So the EDA approved the pump station study at the December meeting for $62,000. And the pump station will be sized for 25,000 gallons a day. Right now, no industrial use, just number of people. And H&P started drafting the pump station documents for the town to review. So here's the pad as it currently sits with the road. And so the pump station will be at the end of the pad and then heading towards FedEx to the west. So basically from here all the way through our property, then FedEx already has an easement for us to connect into. This is the profile of the pump station. It goes heavily down and heavily up. So the EDA may end up owning this pump station if it's only for one industry or the company that moves there. All that is subject to discussion, but the town of Christiansburg is concerned about one user owning that pump station for one user. Again, we're working through all that.
Tough cycle on a pump like that,
It is.
particularly intermittent.
Anybody have any questions on where we are with the construction? All right.
So who ultimately is gonna own this pump station?
The EDA or the owner of the building. It would be on the owner of the building's property. Our goal would be that they get the pump station. We may have to maintain the line that goes through our property, but
Pump could be a tar base.
the goal would be to give to Christiansburg, but right now they're not interested.
I wonder why.
And I really don't want to pay them or make a pump station of substantial size for a large residential development. Because if you go down South Franklin Street, there's a pump station that just serves a large residential development. Backup power, the whole 2 bits, they're very expensive. The next topic is the Workforce Investment Board. I'll let Brenda update you there.
We are working with the New River and Mount Rogers Workforce Investment Board with Marty Holliday. They have developed a sector partnership, which is 3 different industry titles: healthcare, construction trades, and manufacturing logistics. These are sector partnerships that are made up of companies from the same or similar industry with education, workforce development, economic development, and community organizations. And the goal behind this is to create a career lattice to show the education or certificate an employer needs to perform a job. When we go out and talk with the industries, we always hear the same thing, that it's hard to find the workforce that is skill ready. So we had a meeting last week at New River Community College, and we toured the training facilities at New River. And we had 3 of our industries that participated from Montgomery County. It was Spectrum and In Motion and ESS Technologies there. And so the goal is to get more industries involved in this so that we can help the workforce issue.
I think when Marty retires in the summer, we're gonna keep her on to just focus on this.
Okay, that would be good.
When she's semi-retired. She's officially retired.
And last month, Mike brought up the need for virtual shells. So I figured I'd go over what we've done in the past and we can discuss it in more detail. But the goal of virtual shell is to have your site plan finished and approved by the locality. Your buildings plan, all except for plumbing, electrical, mechanical, complete. So basically your shell, and reviewed by the locality. So you work with a contractor to go ahead and pre-price what the building is going to cost. Now, when we originally did this, we were adjusting it every 6 months. My concern with the virtual shell now, it would be adjusted monthly. But basically, Phase 1, Lot 2, where United Therapeutics is currently located, was chosen for our virtual shell. And it was 100,000 square feet expandable to 200,000. And in 2003, 2004, it was $30,000 to get all of those plans developed. So we can discuss the options. I'll just kind of go over. This is a rendering of the pre-engineered metal building, 35-foot clear at the time. We had a little software program and that on a CD, which at that time you really didn't have internet the way we have it now, that we could send to people, and we had a rendering of driving into the park. So it was pretty nice. This is basically the site plan, 100's expandable to 200, and one of the key points of a industrial building is the bay spacing and the height. So it's 50 by 50 bays, which is pretty typical now, and the 35-foot clear. Then of course, we had our budget. And right now, if you could build that building for $15 million, we'd be doing good. Just with the pricing.
When did you do this original one?
Excuse me?
When did you do this original?
2003, 2004.
So the idea is that we, as the locality or the EDA, do some renderings so that people can see what it would look like? Is
Yes.
that the idea? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't, I put the full, on the website, the full packet that you could look at if you want to. It's about 15 megabytes of the virtual shell itself, and the program. There's the slides that show how the program ran. So I didn't want to go into that much detail. But yeah, it's pretty much you have a rendering and 3D animation and your price set.
But it's also have levels of approval.
Correct.
So it can start right away essentially, or very quickly.
You're with a pre-graded pad, you're cutting 6 months of review times out, because they can start building, if you have your structural plans complete and your site plans complete, you can get all the way up to a vertical shell building before any other plans have to be reviewed, which would be your interior mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
We went out with RFP and had selected a developer who then, when the crash came, decided to not take the risk.
The developer, I would say this was valid for about 5 or 6 years, and we were able to update the pricing structure until the contractor that was chosen was no longer interested. It was Facilities of America, which is a North Carolina construction company. They were interested in doing this. Now I think they focus more on just construction. I think the way to go in this day and age would be to go ahead and, because you either have a graded site or you have a building. And people want the existing buildings. But with an existing building, you have more risk.
What other localities in Virginia are using the virtual shell model to do their attraction?
The last one I saw was in 2019 up around Richmond. When I was doing the web search for virtual shells, they did a presentation in 2019, pre-COVID, about one they had developed for their industrial park.
Did they develop it?
Excuse me?
Did they develop it eventually?
I didn't get that far. I just wanted to see
What's the effect
where
of
it was
that?
used.
Yeah.
And
Did it work?
Yeah.
it's really a marketing tool to have somebody say, you know, the cost in the building used to not be in the shell and in the concrete and in the steel. The cost is in the HVAC, the plumbing, and the electrical. Well, now the buildings are just as costly.
I guess our target for this would be lot 2.
You could do a smaller building, like 25,000 square feet on lot 3, if the EDA county chose, and have all those specs. The only spec that would really change would be the stormwater. That evolves now year to year, and pricing. So you could work your way up to that point. It would be with the county being, or the EDA being the leasing agent 9 times out of 10. So that's why I say building a building, if that would be the direction.
Any idea what the price for this virtual shell would be? I say it's $30,000 in 2003, but if it's a virtual shell, it hopefully hadn't escalated as much as real buildings. So
Our site plan for Lot 2, Phase 2, which did include the road and water sewer grading, was about $100,000. So I would say you probably spend about half that on getting your site plan, and about another half, about another 50 approximately on, last time we asked for renderings, which was just layouts on the site, it was $6,000. Just to show, here's a building sitting on the site, and then here's a few side profiles of what it would look like.
So this would be a lot more than that.
It would be. It would be an investment in future market.
Are we losing out on projects because our sites aren't ready? Like, would this help us land more projects?
So I don't know with a virtual shell if it would help us in the prospect arena. Because it's either you have a pre-graded pad, you have a greenfield site, a pre-graded pad, or a building. And right now, I guess if you speak to VEDP and Onward NRV, 2/3 of requests are for existing buildings, which we have none. Our largest is about 5,000 square feet in Blacksburg, building Bill Sterridones.
But this would cut 6 months off the development plan. So if somebody didn't absolutely have to have a building ready-made, they could customize this a little bit. I mean, there's some advantages to it. As long as they weren't under the gun, I would think it would help. Particularly if you've got a couple of prospects on the line.
It would help, and it also help with existing industry. The only other expense besides the review fees would be the town of Christiansburg wants you to go ahead and pay, in order for them to approve the plans, all the fees that and associated. You normally put a bond out for the stormwater, the erosion's out of control. So that's where the only additional cost. And again, we'd have to start from scratch and see how all this would how much it would cost. And will we focus on lot 2, which can hold 3,000 square feet, 300,000 square feet? Or do we focus on like lot 3? You know, we could really use 2 25,000 square foot buildings right now.
Just as an example, assuming the orthopedic surgical center was interested in lot 3, would this shell building, could it work for them?
So that was in closed session. It wouldn't work as well for it would be for an industrial plant, probably, more than likely. We wouldn't have it. There's too much customization. You know, in the town of Blacksburg, you have to put your HVAC on the roof. You don't have a choice. You can't put it next to the building. And so there's a lot of customization. And the way we had it built here, you could put all the HVAC units inside the building or next to it. So how the structure is built. Like the FedEx facility has them on the rooftop where they have air conditioning.
So you'd have to have some idea as to who you might attract to, say, lot 3, for example, before we were make that investment.
If I were looking at it for lot 3, it'd be a 25 to 50,000 square foot building. Because that's where we have active, I guess, clients in that space.
Are we ever thinking that we might want to compete with the CRC
As far as
offering space for people who can't afford the CRC, which is everybody?
So I would never want to openly compete with the CRC, offering space that they don't have, such as manufacturing space. I mean, that's exactly what we did for Torque Robotics. We built them a 20,000 square foot building that was 10,000 office and 10,000 manufacturing for $16 a square foot. That allowed them to get off the ground and move forward. You know, I think right now, the office, we talked about last month how the CRC is going through their own discussions and changes. Right now, it's about, you know, Meld, Torque, those kind of companies. What kind of space do they need and how quickly can you get it? And how expensive is it going to be?
Well, yeah, like you say, the CRC is changing quite a bit. And I noticed that just in the past couple of weeks, they transferred some whole department over into the CRC from campus. Which is, you know, I think they look at the CRC as being available space for...
It's expansion for tech.
It's expansion for tech, yeah. It always has been, but it seriously is now. In my dealings with them, the rents, they do not budge on the rents. And last time I got a quote from somebody there, it was over $30 a square foot.
Without that.
So now, in the bigger picture, you know, there's this thing going on down in Roanoke to try to get some GMP space built with clean rooms and all that, but it's tiny and it won't serve the purpose really. And I think companies, for example, like mine down here in this region, don't want to go to Roanoke for that. I would, you know, we're looking around here having to try to upfit something to just do what we need. And, you know, the biggest problem is the HVAC, really. Because if you need a DOAS unit, it's like $250,000. And you have to have that for a clean room. So it's niche space, but it's going to be in more and more demand going forward. And I did one of the spaces we looked at over at CRC. The company that was in there went to North Carolina because they couldn't afford to be there anymore. And there's lots of space down in North Carolina for the kinds of things that we want to do around here. So whether it's really direct competition with CRC, it's kind of a matter of definition. If they're not competitive, then you're not competing with them. If you just have space that could be used for combination office lab like Luna, for example. We had that kind of space available, man, we would be in it right now probably. Well, given all the other issues that they have, but you know what I mean. If they had to move and we had space, they'd be in it.
And Luna was our original Lot 3 project of
Yeah,
40,000 square feet.
So, and there are some developers around with the right handling, with the right care, who would be involved. But they understand that these small businesses first starting up are kind of risky, so they got to build in some backstop for that. But I know it's just something to think about. It's a need we have here that, in my opinion, the CRC is not trying to address. They've got some other plans, and I don't know what they are. I know they're putting residences in there now and everything else. So, but their rates are so high that I don't know who can afford to go in there unless they're getting help from somebody. If we had an alternative for generic, it could be manufacturing or laboratory and office, whatever combined, as long as it's not, real nasty stuff that you put in there. Plus, you got
Kind of like
United
this,
Therapeutics.
what they have in Floyd, they have the innovation center that has flex space for like manufacturing or other uses. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, except on a larger scale. Yeah. Have you been to that place? Yeah.
I guess,
That's
yeah,
where
maybe
Ann is, right?
my question would be like, is there a gap? Right, we have anecdotal evidence that there is a gap, but is there a way to quantify that gap? Are there small scale companies that need help accelerating, I guess, in a bigger space? And is there available space for them in Montgomery County, or are they having to leave? And if we're able to quantify that, we can make a business case that maybe flex space makes sense.
But it definitely is a sort of
here.
chicken and egg thing for sure. And it just depends on, what kind of appetite you have for the risk. Because the startups around here, although they should be popping out like crazy, they don't for some reason. And there's some talk on campus about trying to improve that situation, but I haven't seen that it actually has improved. It seems like they're still coming out the same rate they always did. Now the newer ones with a pretty high prospect level are down in Roanoke, at the Freda place. So other kinds that are not biomedical necessarily still don't have a real good place to go.
Could the virtual shell be adapted to look at different uses and maybe not a virtual shell building for one manufacturer, but for a few?
So you start talking about an incubator or a shared manufacturing facility where you own the building and the EDA, the county, owns the facility, and then they generally do the upfit and lease it back if you have a multi-use facility. And we could certainly use those. One contractor in this region is building two 10,000 square foot buildings and one 12, and they're already leased. And they're looking to put more, but again, that person is just worried about revenue, making money on the project, where ours is a little more into jobs and investment.
Well, it's really not our mission here to solve all the problems of the region, because this is a much bigger problem than just little Montgomery County. But
Roughly speaking, order of magnitude, what kind of investment would we be looking at for all in for virtual shell?
We'd have to reach out for pricing, but I'd say about $100,000 roughly. And the EDA received a lot of interest revenue this past year, about $83,000. So the EDA, without asking the county, may have some funding for that. So we can find out how much it would cost. I think the guidelines would be, where do we want to start? We want to start at a 25,000 square foot building or 100,000 square feet? 25 would be more for existing industry, 100 would be more for new industry.
We've done this, the last time we did this 2003, and it more or less worked out. I mean, my thoughts would be, to Ellie's point, if you probably define what kind of demand might be out there. and then work on that, and then work on the budget end for, I would suggest lot 3. It's a little smaller scale, probably work out better for us.
Based on Onward's historical data of the kind of buildings that people want and the data we have enough data to justify a size. So the last time we looked at building someone a 20,000 square foot building that was 35 foot clear with full HVAC, the price was $8 million. And at 20, that was plus or minus $20 a square foot for a 20-year amortization. Cost is really the issue. So let us go back, check on the virtual shell cost, check with a couple of builders about how much it would cost, contractors and engineers, and then we can come back to you.
Well, probably we have the one project that did go through. I'm not going to say it because I think it was a closed meeting, but the one that was going to be built for that prospect in Blacksburg that tanked, but we had pricing on that, didn't we? Or we had something from the developer.
That developer did have about a $20 square foot pricing on the project.
It would have been about what we're talking about here. And it's just like 20 months old. So.
I guess as a consensus, if we want to look at this, do we want to look at lot 3 or lot 2? Lot 3 would be the small one and lot 2 would be the larger.
Maybe 3 is harder to market, so this might help it, but then 2 is gonna be a much bigger investment, so maybe this could make the difference. I'm also curious, like, is VDP willing to, I know this, we can't go up a tier if we have the virtual shell, but are they gonna help, is someone gonna market this like
They
it
would
already
market it
has?
for us,
Okay, they
yes.
would market it like we.
You have to have a minimum of 50 acres to get any funding from them. That's the problem. But they would definitely market whatever you have.
50 acres on one lot.
Excuse me?
50 acres on one lot.
Yes. You have to have a 50-acre lot in order to get, it's Virginia Sites, I can't think of the full acronym, but basically it's their building fund. They have $20 million for the whole state this year.
We don't have that, so. But they market it for us.
Right. I mean, for them, it would be a quicker way to have a building. And I can also discuss it with the VEDP sites and buildings people and get their thoughts. They've got a really good dedicated team.
I hate to see our parks kept swallowed up by distribution centers without something else being in there. I think the one opportunity that we talked about today, closed session, was a good one for that reason. And something like this would also be good to have a mix, so that it's not just giant warehousing.
So I think we'd have a lot more appetite for something scaled to lot 3 than lot 2.
Correct. FedEx was a $15 million building, just the build.
Well, thanks for looking that up and bringing it to the meeting. I appreciate that.
We'll do that. And then the last item is broadband, which I'll let Carly go over as soon as I get down there.
So there hasn't been a lot of change since we last met. I think last we met there was 1,347 active passings. There's now 1,415. And VADI 2021, 7 of 8 railroad crossings have been completed. That's the same as last month. Gigabeam has placed over 200 miles of fiber in Montgomery County, and as it warms up, they are going to be starting some of their underground construction. So there's utility locates going on around the county. AP has completed 10.85 miles of the Reiner Loop. I think it was 8 something last time we met. That is a 24.9 mile loop. And then Same as last time, framing and locates are going on in the Prices Fork Loop. And they have started doing framing and locates on the North Boxer Tri-Cities Loop, which has happened since the last time we met. This was about a week and a half ago that we last talked to them about this, but they're still doing storm damage repairs. A lot of the fiber and surrounding areas, as well as the fiber that they've already built in Montgomery County, was damaged in the storm. So, some other stuff that we're doing with broadband. Montgomery County, Giles County, Floyd County, Pulaski County, and Bradford are working with the Regional Commission to develop a digital opportunity plan for the region. This was funding that came down through DHCD. There was up to $25,000 per locality, so we decided to go in with these other localities for a more regional approach. And we first met, we had a steering committee meeting in February. And the final plan delivery will be in October, but the project objectives are to identify the assets that we have within the community, and then problem identification needs, and then come up with goals and strategies for implementation. And DHCD provided this funding in anticipation of more implementation funding coming down. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Is there an opportunity for like community input that we could share?
So there will be a local summit in each locality, and this is really early stages still. So like we're helping the regional commission get contacts and stuff, and figuring out who needs to be included in that, and then there will be a regional summit as well.
So just wanted to mention, of course, the next meeting is April 15th. At the May meeting, I will be out of town, so I wanted to see if I guess get the EDA thinking about what we should do. Cancel the May 20th meeting, or maybe make a May and June meeting in early June. So staff will follow up with you and see what works best.
Anything else? I guess we'll be adjourned.